Everyone, this is Alan Forrest Smith here talking about my new deliberate recreation project. Now I know you can't see Tamara, but my wife Tamara is on the other side of the camera. She's going to be asking some questions and I'll just be... we'll just turn the volume down. So usual experiments. Still play it but turn the volume right down. Is it done?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So we're just going to, I thought I'd just share with you what this deliberate recreation project is. Tamara is on the other side of the camera. She's going to be asking a few questions and hopefully it'll be of interest. And if you have any questions, of course, put the questions in the box underneath. Tamara can see all the questions and she'll be shouting them across at me.
So, what is this deliberate life recreation project to start with?
So it was hard for me to explain initially what deliberate life recreation actually was. So initially it arrived kind of towards the end of last year. We had a huge office not far from here because we live in an apartment, but it's a big apartment, it's a penthouse apartment, so we have lots of space, but we wanted a little bit more space off site so we could go to the office. So we had the office for around a year, and during the time in the office I began to feel like a caged animal, to be quite honest. So I wanted to change things up because I was feeling a little bit less fulfilled, like I've had these things before in my life. I didn't have things happening the way I wanted them to happen. It felt like a routine. So I decided to do this project called Deliberate Recreation. Now at the time I have notepads everywhere. I have hundreds of notepads all over the apartment and on the shelves behind me. And when I have an idea, I always write it down right away. So it might be worth reading to you what the actual idea was. So you can see here, it says Deliberate Recreation Experiment. It says, I want to change certain things in my life. Those changes must have an impact. The changes must be legacy built. The legacy will be in written form. I write now. I am a writer. I've written books and thousands of words. The purpose is to enhance life and the meaning of my life. I will list all the things needed. I will list one right now, and that is the distraction through electronic things. And then of course I went on to write a huge list of things I felt would need to be deliberately recreated in my life to have more of an impact.
So, can you share your personal life recreation experience? I suppose the question I'm asking is, there are many areas. I think the readers would get the idea that you can recreate anything from, maybe it's from health to jobs, career, or even like daily habits. So
yeah.
Just maybe your experience.
Well, as you know, I have lots of recreations in my life. Now, I just want to emphasise the word deliberate. Deliberate means you are actually consciously aware of what you're doing, which means you are deliberately making a change that has an impact. And then you're going to recreate, which means an active movement. To recreate something, you have to be active. Nothing will recreate if I just sit in this chair and don't do anything. So, experiences, well, we haven't practiced this call, and I have so many, I'm not sure, but like you say, you can deliberately recreate any area of your life. Whether it be financial, whether it be your job, whether it be your business, whether it be relationships, whether it be your life in general. A couple of recreations just very quickly off the cuff. One recreation was when I used to be a landscape gardener and I recreated myself as a hairdresser. So that was one, but I think probably one of the most dramatic recreations I've had in my life was at the back of a brutal divorce. Now, at the very end of this, this is absolutely true. I was completely broke, didn't have a single penny. I was living in my elderly parents' home in a room which was only 8 foot by 6 foot, and I had come from a 5-bedroom detached, self-built, a house that I built myself, a home in an acre, to living in a single room with my parents next door at 47, 48. So it wasn't really that long ago. And what was really dramatic about that recreation was this. How was I going to get out of that mess? Because I had to recreate a home life and a home for myself. I had to recreate an income or a job for myself. And the third thing I wanted in my life as well at that time would be a new relationship. But I'm not stupid. I knew I couldn't have a new relationship if I had nothing to offer. So one evening, what used to happen was I used to walk over to the old graveyard in the evening, and it was winter. And I'd walk over to the old graveyard just behind my parents' home. And at the old graveyard, because it was in the village where I used to live, sometimes people would see me sitting on the bench at the front. So I looked a bit sad and miserable and lost, and they were probably thinking, there's the guy who used to live in the big house. So what I used to do, I used to go to the back of the graveyard where nobody could see me, where all the ghosts were hanging out, where all the dead people were, and everything else. So I would sit at the back of the graveyard, and this particular night I sat there for just hours and hours. It was minus below, everything was frosty, including my shoes. And I sat on the bench with my head back looking up into the sky, just looking at the clear sky and thinking, how the hell am I going to get out of this mess? I was probably 47, 48. I had nothing. All I had was my life experience, and that was it. So the biggest recreation I did was I went away. I had a moment. I had a moment in that graveyard. I don't know what happened. I had a moment, and I thought I either die or I just explode with this recreation process. And I wasn't thinking about recreation at the time. I was probably thinking about survival and coming back to life again. So I thought, well, how can I do this? So what I did is I left the graveyard. I got into my parents' house at 2:30 in the morning, after sitting there for hours in the freezing cold. I wrote some notes on a sheet, and then I climbed into the small bed, tiny little bed, on my own, and this room was always freezing cold as well. So I lay in the bed, and I woke up about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Just had a few hours sleep. I woke up and I sat down in this room, and I wrote a plan. I actually made a plan of action of what I would have to do today, tomorrow, in the next 7 days, to be able to go and not buy but rent a home at that time, because I'd been bankrupt. So because I'd gone through a bankruptcy as well, I couldn't just go to an agent and say, can I rent that house? Because as a bankrupt you can't do anything for 6 years. So what I knew was I needed 12 months cash, and I had no money. So what I did is I did everything I had to do. Within a week I had more than enough money. In fact, I'll tell you right now, within about a week I'd earned through the skills I knew for the past 25 years, I'd earned about £24,000. And I went down to an agent and I said, can I have this house? And he said, we'll have to do the checks. I said, no, I just want to pay 1 year in advance. And that was the beginning of my deliberate recreation at that point.
It's actually like the question that came to my mind is, so it's an interesting concept, because it sounds like obviously you didn't really label at the time deliberate recreation. It was just a kind of natural process, but I wonder if it was obviously that was almost like out of necessity. And so would you say maybe, is there like a difference, like, recreating out of necessity, or maybe you just feel like you just want to recreate and just create new life? Doesn't have to be maybe going through out of necessity recreation. So
I think at a much deeper level everything is out of necessity, because you have a part so deep inside a human being that it all goes back to the needs of that individual. So most drowning men learn to swim when they're drowning, and they swim to the side, and that's why most drowning people don't drown. So yeah, that was necessity, that was survival mode. But at the same time, there's lots of occasions I've certainly been through where you can tap into, I'm not sure what it is, you can tap into something so much deeper and so much stronger and so much more powerful that it will give you enough strength to lift up a truck, just as an illustration. It gives you that amount of strength. However, you have to be able to tap into it. So yeah, you're right, there is necessity sometimes, but that wasn't just necessity, because maybe what I failed to mention was I've been living with my parents for maybe around 6 months with no way out. So my parents said, you can stay here as long as you want, Alan. But I had to make a deliberate decision to recreate my then lifestyle, to fulfill those needs that I had. And those needs was to be a grown man, live in his own home again, get his business going, have cash in the bank, and eventually have a great relationship with the perfect person, which of course is you, darling. So yeah, there is two things going on. But you know what I mean, it's a little bit like, you know, if you think back to when I was a hairdresser. I've been a hairdresser for 20 years. I started hairdressing in 1982. I started cutting hair when I was 15, when I was a punk rocker. Then I decided to train when I was 20. So in 1982 I became a hairdresser, all the way up until 2003. But in the late 90s, 98, 99, I made a choice then that I had to get myself out of hairdressing into something brand new. I had to do. The reason was my back was in such a state, my spine, that I would be working 2 or 3 weeks in the salon, then I would have to have 1 week off doing nothing because the pain was so great. So clearly I couldn't be the age I am now as a hairdresser. And that was when I decided to become a writer, and everybody thought it was crazy. But I knew if I knew there was a couple of things going on. One, I had to re-educate myself, so that was a deliberate recreation. I didn't do any studying at school, so to sit down and read a book was a big deal. So I had to deliberately recreate myself at that level, and of course, I had to find the time, and I had to make the application. And it was only in 2003 I eventually made a transition from selling the salons and becoming a full-time writer.
Mm-hmm. No, interesting. It goes to... do you want to then share a little bit more? You know, you mentioned this word tapping into something a lot greater than you can even explain or express. So what's your experience? Is that just a natural ability that you can tap into it, or is that something that you can deliberately find ways to tap into that, whatever that bigger source is?
Yeah, well, I'm a strong believer in believing in things that I don't have to understand. Now, we live in a scientific world where if nothing's explained, something can't be explained, we don't believe it. As far as I'm concerned, not everything has to be explained. So, as far as I'm concerned, we have, first of all, we have something up until the 17th century. It used to be very common. Everybody worked through intuition. Well, not everybody, but it was more common. So the intuitive process of a person was a daily experience. It wasn't something you had to go, I'm intuitive, I can do this, I can do that. It was something everybody did. So for example, you can read in some places, the tribe would say, we're not going to go hunting today because there's going to be nothing there. And they wouldn't go hunting for say 7 days. And there's real stories about all this stuff. So after 7 days they'll go, we're going to go hunting today, but the leader of the tribe will say, we're going to go right where we never go instead of going left to where we always go. And what he would be doing was following his intuitive sense. So it's a little bit like, for example, say you're in a relationship and you know it's wrong, but you don't want to go away, but you know it's wrong, but you don't want to leave, but you know it's wrong, but you know it's wrong because although you're accepting it as okay, your intuitive sense is telling you it's not okay. So how do we know our intuition is right or wrong? You either feel good about something or you feel bad.
So would you say that a lot of our intuition possibly are getting kind of clouded or dusted by the constant plugging in through, whether it's we're right now through social media or web or whatever we do on a daily basis? Would you say that that's the problem or the challenge? Would say not a problem.
Yes and no. I think the human being started to be stripped back and reprogrammed during the Industrial Revolution. That's when the programming of the individual began. So the programming is this: you will eat breakfast, so you will wake up at such a time, you will eat breakfast, you will have a break and have a snack, you will have lunch, you will work, you'll have a snack, then you'll go home. You'll go home, you'll have your dinner, rest for whatever time, and then you may have some supper. That is the programming of the human being. So the programming is so embedded that unless we step outside the programming and look back on it, so we stand outside and we look at ourselves from a different angle, only then can we really understand what the programming is. On top of that, of course, these days we talk about artificial intelligence. Well, actually, there is no such thing as artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is programmed by humans. So I know my kids, for example, and a lot of people you speak to these days, people are no longer activating that deeper sense within their brain. What they're doing is they're saying, yeah, I'll Google it, I'll search it. Instead of really finding the answers for themselves, using what I call their God code, instead of really finding it for themselves, they're asking artificial intelligence, Google, whatever, that was programmed by a human being who may not have the mind that you have, but he's programmed these mathematical probabilities into the software to give you the answer that hopefully you're looking for. But wouldn't it be... It's interesting. It's interesting that people with depression, some countries, some doctors, some therapists will say, if your depression is so bad, say if you're in one country, they will say, take this tablet, take that tablet, sleep a bit more, rest a bit more, don't go into the sunlight. Yet some, what they call modern, out there therapists will say, take a walk in nature every day. Every single day, walk in nature, let's feel the wind on your face, feel the wind through your hair, smell everything, listen to the birds. That's the therapy. So we've become so far deprogrammed, of course, what I call zoomanic. So we're now zoomans under the zoomanic trance within zoomanity. To escape that, we have to make a deliberate recreation. Otherwise, it won't happen.
So, walk us maybe through all the deliberate recreation. I think it's kind of 21-day challenge, or so. What does that actually include? What's in it?
Off the top of my head, I'm glad I picked up the notebook on the way past. On the top of my head, I can't remember, but well, basically, first of all, deliberate recreation project has been on my mind for a long time. And of course, I felt a little bit unfulfilled last year with the big office. So I wanted to get rid of the office and I wanted to recreate our life to make us more fulfilled. Although we are a very happy couple, I wanted us to feel more fulfilled. So the notes that are in here are based on a human experience and my own experience, because if you remember, I originally said I'm going to do this deliberate recreation experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of things it covers, first of all, what I've been working on is I've been working on a program to deprogram the zooming into human.
Jared saying hi.
Hi, Jared.
If there are any questions, you should.
Yeah, it's if there's any questions so far, please ask questions. Type them in the bottom. That'll be cool. So, first of all, to deprogram the human being, we have to. I'm just going to go from some notes on my pages. We have to look at our daily distractions. If you remember at the time, I decided to download an app to measure. This app, I forgot the app is called, but it measures how often you pick up your phone, how often you open it, what you look at, and how long you look at each thing. And I suddenly discovered, I was a little bit shocked, but I kind of knew this was happening, that I was spending between 3 and 4 hours every day picking up my phone, opening it for 3 minutes on average and closing it. And sometimes there was 1.5 minutes between gaps. So I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't connecting with anyone. It was an addiction. So I'd become addicted to the addiction. I'd been drawn in and hooked into this addiction of distraction. So one of the things addressed in the Deliberate Recreation Project is distraction. Another thing is the awareness of time. I'm just going to go through a few little things here. Another thing here is having a vision for your life. Now, I think this is very important without it sounding cheesy, without it sounding like, you have to have a vision board and all that stuff. You do what works for you. If you want a vision board, have a vision board. You do whatever works for you. But what is actually the vision for your life? Because I'll tell you this now, without any exaggeration. Whatever I've seen in my life arrives, without fail. And I'm not walking on doing a mantra, I'm not doing anything. All I know is in here, this is exactly what I need to create my own personal happiness. Not want and need's a different thing. It's something I need to create my own personal happiness. So, you have to have a vision for your life, for your being. Where am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? If you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? So, for example, once, long time ago, when my children were all babies, I drove off the ferry in San Malo, and I was heading towards a place called Saint Nazaire. And when I came off the ferry at San Malo, everybody was going a certain way, and what I decided to do was turn right. Now, I turned right for 3 hours. This was before sat-navs. And I eventually almost arrived at a place called Brest. And I thought, this is way, we're in the wrong direction. So what should have taken 1.5 to 2 hours to get there, I suddenly realised we were at Brest. I had to ask a farmer, and he drew in the soil actually in the field with a stick which way to turn. I couldn't speak French, he couldn't speak English. And what happened was, I thought I was going somewhere just by the fact that I was driving forward. But actually I was going in the wrong direction. I added another 6 hours to the whole journey till we got to Saint Nazaire. Now life is a little bit like that. Unless you know exactly where you're going and you have some semblance of direction mapped out, it won't be going anywhere. It will not be going anywhere, because your life will then be in the hands of the decisions of what other people are telling you to do when you get to work, when you get to the job, when you get up in the morning, and so on and so on and so on. So you have to have vision. Do you want me to tell you some more, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, you have to think about things like your habits. I'm just going through my notebooks. This notebook is slightly different to the finished project. You have to look back at the message. I mentioned the message in Escape from Humanity, one of my books, but for me, the message is so impactful that I don't think people really look at the message. And the question anyone watching this video is, what is the message? I think life is designed to give us messages all the way through. So all the way through life, things will take place that can and will and has left you a message. But the question is, what is the message? How do you decipher that code? So, for example, if you look at politicians, of course there is no sense in the senseless as far as a politician goes. But a politician is a man who doesn't understand the message. He only understands his own ego and he understands it right now. That's it. But history has already left a message which says, if you go down this route that other nations before you have been down many, many times, if you go down this route, this is what will happen. That's the message. It's a little bit like the man who gets divorced and he marries exactly the same woman again in a slightly different form, and he gets divorced, and he marries the same woman again and he gets divorced. And some people will marry 3 or 4 or 5 different people.
Okay, we have a question.
Because they haven't listened to the message.
So Jared's asking, are you talking metaphorically? I have many desires. I break free from working for the man, having enough money, but be a great dad, and I'm always consuming, but I'm not getting anywhere. In fact, oops, I can't read in. Are you talking metaphorically?
Look, Jared, everybody creates their own life. Everybody creates their own life. So it can be a bitter pill to swallow that sometimes even the bad stuff in our life, we've created it. But we don't focus on the bad stuff. We focus on, how do I recreate my life deliberately to create a new life? So for example, you can't stop working for the man unless you do a transition. How can you start working for someone else, stop working for a job, if you don't create some kind of transition that replaces the income? Now, of course, if you're a great dad and you have all the stuff and you're over consuming, all I can tell you is this is a process of self-analysis. And the process of self-analysis is what is happening in my life. So for example, I can relate to that because I was a big consumer as well. As a consumer, I had a huge home, which I didn't really need. I had brand new cars, BMWs, Mercedes, which to be honest, I never really drove. I had a vintage car, which I didn't really drive. Motorbikes, huge place. BMWs, Mercedes, which to be honest, I never... Sorry, just throw me a little bit. So, it's really the whole deliberate recreation project is designed to allow you to think about your life and structure and plan that life in a way that's effective for you to move into a different direction. Because, like I said before, you can't recreate anything unless you know what you're doing. It has to be planned. But the first step takes with a realization that I can't stay here any longer. I have to move somewhere else. I don't know if that really answers the question because I got thrown a little bit with the... You can't see what's going on behind the camera.
I suppose that's maybe a relevant question to ask while you're talking about recreation. So you wrote something around this deliberate recreation project, which is available on iTunes and anywhere it's free. The message which is just asking basically, what if I walked away from everything, what would happen? So is that something that related to that? Yeah,
it is related to it. first of all, I wouldn't recommend anybody just close the door and walk away, because you will end up in a mess. Now, the whole thing about deliberate recreation is deliberately recreating. Now, I did have those questions, and I've had those questions many times in life, which is, what if I stood up from this room, walked to the door and closed the door and walked away from everything? I have done that once in my life, and it was a complete and total mess. But when I've done it planned, well thought out, well created, as far as the income goes, as far as the home goes, and everything else. I mean, even us as a couple in this relationship, we have deliberately recreated our own home life on more than one occasion. So before, when we're talking about consuming, before we came to this big apartment, we had a huge house. We had a huge house with something like 13 rooms, and we never used hardly any of them. We used the kitchen, the lounge, and the main bedroom, and of course we had an office in the house. So you have to really plan this and think about it. And part of the project is talking about wants and needs. So, is there any more questions? I don't know how we are for time now.
No, when I put the comments, I don't think so.
Okay.
But you can encourage people.
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask a question, please feel free to ask a question. So, once when I had to recreate my own life, I decided to go to California for a couple of months. And I stayed there for 3 months. And I thought about the difference between wants and needs, because I had nothing at the time. So I wrote down what...
Sorry, Jared's asking. I'm sorry, I meant consuming information.
Consuming information? Ah, I see. So, I think consuming information is one of the biggest problems we have now. But it's not consuming information, it's consuming information that doesn't really inform. That's the difference. So, the problem is now we live a life with our thumbs. And we can go onto Facebook and scroll and scroll and scroll. We can go onto Instagram and do the same. We can go onto YouTube and do the same. So we consume more than we need as far as information. And I know for a fact, when I work with any mentor students in my Orange Beetle business, the very first thing I ask them to do is to unsubscribe from every email they're subscribed to. Without fail. Because if they remain subscribed to emails, they read and they're just distracted. They want to go in different directions all the time. There's no method, there's no methodology. It's just, I hope something's going to work. So the overconsumption of information is a problem. But never forget this, the brain is very smart. The brain has the ability to block out. You know, people will say people see 20,000 images a day these days. The brain is smart enough to block out certain things. However, we're still consuming far too much. We're consuming far too much. So, as far as information goes, what I like to do is I like to, for example, when I became a copywriter, I'd never heard of copywriters. I'd never even heard of copywriters at all. So, somebody said to me, buy a book on copywriting, because I was a writer at the time. And I thought, well, what is a copywriter? And he said to me, well, it's somebody who does what you do, writes for a living. I said, okay, because I was doing this stuff while I was still at the hairdressing salon. So I bought one book by a guy called David Ogilvy. And I devoured everything, and I decided to use him as my role model. So I copied, but modernised, everything from this guy. However, what you find with copywriters now, copywriters, for example, will say online, oh, I have 4,000 books on copy. I have 3,000 books on copy. I'm reading 6 books this week alone on copy. That's over-information. So whatever we're doing in life, don't over-inform us, because it doesn't serve us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any more questions? So, deliberate recreation does have an outcome.
Okay, so Jared, good idea. I easily get sucked into the next thing, been studying copy for 12 months, then Facebook marketing, then ClickFunnels, shiny gold syndrome.
It's a shiny gold syndrome, yeah. But you can do that anything in life. I mean, I have a friend who goes on 300 dates every year and is still single because she thinks the next big thing is coming, but it's not. She's probably missed the perfect man on those 300 dates. And really, business, especially online. I think what's interesting online, I don't really want to cover this right now, but what's interesting online. Question?
Gary's asking. Hi, Gary. What has been the most difficult part of this process for you?
The most difficult part of... Hi, Gary. The most difficult part of recreating deliberately, for me, is it's not really letting go of certain things, because I'm quite good at letting go of things now and stuff. I don't really care about stuff anymore. But the most difficult part for me is always creating new habits, because I just find it hard. But once a new habit is created, for say a month, I'm usually on my way. The second most difficult thing is having the picture, the vision in view. You have to know where you're going. So for me, at the moment, well, I'll share this with you. At the moment in my office, I have a picture on the wall of our next home. Now, our next home won't look like this picture, but it's definitely the home that I need to be in. It's not a want, it's a need. Because I also have very specific, I'm going to need this, I need somewhere to sit, and I want to have my electric guitar, it's loud enough so it's not going to annoy people, and all these different needs. So I have a very specific picture. But I'm not stupid either. I know that that need can only come through money. So what it does is, it then sets off a train of events that leads to the income by applying what I know, or what skills I have, or what skills I have to relearn. So the most difficult part, I think, really is, I think you can see it now, it's having that absolutely clear vision. If you're not clear, nobody ever finds their way home in the fog. It's not possible. If you don't live in that town, you won't find your way home in the fog. Recreation's a little bit like that. It's like going to a new town on a foggy day. You need to know exactly where you're going. I don't know if that answers the question, Gary. Is there any more questions? Anybody have any other questions?
So it's interesting, that habit thing, because obviously it almost started to sound like a cliche. You can often see 21-day challenge and 28-day challenge, and I suppose there is a reason for that habitually.
When I started writing,
helpful, thank you.
When I started writing on my blogs, I'd never written really a lot of stuff before at that level. So I decided, oh God, I'm not going to be able to do this. I tried writing one, I tried writing two, and I couldn't get it done. And I tried all these different things. I'll write one on Friday, I'll write 3 on Saturday. So in the end I decided, I thought, okay, there's only one way I'm going to do this. And it was with no distraction. So, as you know, I'm terrible at waking up in the morning. So I set my alarm clock for 6 o'clock, and I got out of bed, and for 30 days solid, I wrote until 7 o'clock. Now, I didn't do anything. Didn't go to the toilet, didn't have a wash, didn't get a drink, I had no breakfast.
You mean 7 in the morning, not in the evening?
Yes, did I say in the morning?
From 6 in the morning till 7 in the morning.
Yeah, that's right, from 6 till 7.
Sounded like 7 in the evening.
So what I did is I woke up and I sat at my little table and I wrote for 1 hour. And I did that for 30 days. And you know what happened after 30 days?
Habit.
I couldn't stop writing. I had to write every day, and I've been writing since. And as you know, I write a lot of stuff every single day. So it's a habit. Yeah, it's important to do things that work for you, because what works for me won't work for other people either.
Well, tell us then a little bit about this actual deliberate recreation program, because there is a free introductory thing people can listen as well.
Yeah, so all I know is deliberate recreation has worked in my life so many times, and it sometimes works at a level that I don't really know how it works, but it has worked. So the program itself is a book. The program isn't quite finished, because what I'm doing is, for this program, I'm going to release it as it's finished. Everything's written out. I think there's 6 recordings created so far. I'm recording another 4 tomorrow. The first recordings are available on iTunes for free. Alan Forrest Smith on iTunes for free.
It's from Alan Forrest Smith.
Yeah, so you have to go through alanforrestsmith.com. Go to the courses. I think it's at the courses tab. Go to the courses tab. You'll see deliberate recreation there. So you can buy into the program now, and I've decided to do it at a very low price. If people want to just pick it up and see what it's all about. So it's an audio program I decided to do audio instead of video, so you can put it on your phone and listen in the gym or driving or whatever. Along with that, there is a workbook, and at the back of this, when the workbook is completely finished, which is almost finished, when the workbook is completely finished, there's going to be a 21-day program goes with that as well, and that'll be as a bonus product that goes on the end of this as well.
But they can listen for free.
Yeah, they can listen for free. Yeah, you can listen for free. You'll find it on alanforrestsmith.com, and you'll find it under the courses there. So any more questions?
Jared saying thank you for your advice, Alan.
Okay, guys. Well, look. All I know is life in 2017 isn't a lot different from life in 2007 or 1997 or 1967. You know, the world the way it is now within the Zoomanic structure is designed to hold us in very, very tight grip, to control us through daily embedding. It's only up to you to make the changes. And those changes can be done. I'm proof of those changes can be done. I've never been so healthy in my life. I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. Lots and lots of areas of my life are completely different to what they used to be. I've been self-employed most of my life. I had to create that stuff. Nobody gave me that. I had to create the home. I had to create the work. I had to create everything. It's very, very possible. You'll love the program. It's really cool. I've actually rewritten the whole program. The original program is in here. I did think I may release the notes to this at some point, just through images or photographs, because it's a little bit different to the finished product. And I've also rewritten the program as well, because the first program was good, but I want it to be brilliant. So it's a great program, easy to follow, and you'll be able to do it every single day. So if you're one of these people who've logged in this evening and listened to this, I'm really grateful for your time listening to me rambling on. And we'll keep this video, we'll put it on YouTube, and it'll be on Facebook also as well. So thanks everybody for listening. alanforrestsmith.com